Cool. Okay. So as Mark said, we're going to talk a lot about bulbs, but it's basically plant it now and enjoy it later. I am a fall person. I am a winter person. I am a spring person. I hate the summer. 75 degrees is when I'm happy. Anything above that, I complain. You'll never hear me say it's too cold. I might say I'm cold, but I'll say it's too hot all the time. So we want to talk about things you can do this time of the year. And as Mark said, we're probably going to talk a lot about bulbs, but there are other things. And I wanted to talk a little bit about planting in the first place, because everybody knows that's what you do. And you've heard it before, but we're just going to go there just a little bit today. Proper location, hole depth, root amendment, mulch, and watering. You've heard it all before. We're just gonna overgo it a little bit. So the old thing, location, location, location. If you get the right location for the plant that you have, you are halfway there. If you plant a full shade plant in the sun, it is going to be exceptionally unhappy if it lives at all. I have pushed that occasionally, some partial shade I put in sun, and they struggle, but they're doing okay. But if it says full sun, then you're good to go with full sun. Don't plant it in full shade because it will not be happy there either. A lot of plants need to be fairly with fast draining. So a lot of those can be planted on slopes so that they do drain very well. A lot of your Mediterranean and Australian plants need to be very dry. Flat is a great place if a plant can take damp conditions or is not really picky about where it's located. A lot of plants will say, protect from the wind. And they mean that. They mean to make sure it's not getting that westerly wind that's going to keep it dried out. And some plants were made to be screen plants. Again, dry and damp. Some plants are your xeric gardening, don't like a lot of water because it'll promote root rot. And other plants are great in damp areas, low areas. Plants that you see on rain garden lists are great for locations that might be a little on the low side and stay damp a lot. The next thing to talk about is the hole that you dig for your plant. Used to be a $50 hole for a $5 plant. Well, I don't know about you, but there are not very many $5 plants around anymore. So we bumped that up a zero, and you want a $500 hole for your $50 plant. If you dig it properly, and it will make a big difference on the plant's ability to become well-established quickly. The best things are planting beds. If you can do that, that's wonderful. Sometimes that's difficult if you're doing trees, but if you're doing some shrubs, or if you're doing a lot of perennials, or in our case, if you're doing a lot of bulbs, planting beds are great. Most of my bulbs that I plant in the fence line and in the just doing it now in my pollinator area, I do beds. I dig a hole that's probably 2 or 3 feet wide, and most bulbs have to be about 3 to 4 inches deep. And then you can just place your bulbs in that and cover it back up, and the bulbs are going to be happy and they're going to root in very well. Most trees and shrubs have to be planted at the same depth as the root ball. You don't want them too deep because that might cover up the crown of the plant or the flare of the tree, and you'll have problems with it not getting enough air, getting too much moisture down in there. You don't want it too high. In a lot of cases, it's nice to have it just a little bit above soil line so that when it settles, it will be right at soil depth. And if your roots are, when you pull your plant out of the pot, if it's very well root bound, like the plant in the middle, you'll need to make those roots come out. If they're really root bound like that, sometimes you have to cut them and then pull the roots out to the side. I prefer, if you can, to just tease them with your fingers out and not cut quite as much. But sometimes it's almost impossible to get your fingers in there and pull those long roots out. Whether to add things to the soil, to the hole, that's pretty well proven now that you don't want to add a lot to your holes. When you take the soil out of the hole that you dig, you pretty much want to put all of that soil back in without a lot of amendments. A little bit of amending is okay, especially in the sandy soil, but in the clay soil, you don't want to add a whole lot. You want to get that clay back into the hole with your plant so that those roots get used to being in clay. And when they bump up against your walls of the hole that you dug, it's not going to go, oh, I'm in a pot and just keep circling. It's going to go, okay, I've been fighting through this clay all along, so I'll just go into this wall of clay and make myself established. If you do have sandy soil, which is the southern part of our area, you might want to add a little bit of compost to it to help retain some moisture while you're getting your plant established. Mulch is just very important after you've planted your plant. You want to put a good 2 inches, maybe 3 inches of mulch around your plant, and you want to put it out as wide as the drip line and even farther if you can, because the feeder roots are actually right at the drip line and sometimes out a little bit as they grow. You don't want to put it against the trunk of the tree or over the crown of the plant because that will encourage voles to come up there and snack on your plants, which is not something any of us wants. The initial mulching can be somewhere between 2 and 3 inches. Every year, it's a wonderful idea to mulch your plants because that mulch breaks down and starts feeding your soil. If you have the sandy soil, it helps make that sandy soil less sandy and hold moisture and put in the nutrients. So if you do it twice a year, which is a good thing to do it early spring and then the late fall, you can put a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. If you only do it once a year, then probably 2 inches in the spring or the fall, whenever you're doing it. Watering a newly planted plant is extremely important. Most people say, most of the research says that watering it for a year helps get it established well and gets it growing much better. Water is supposed to be about 1 inch a week. And it should be done where you water a lot at one time to get it down into the roots. You don't want to water just the top part because that will just encourage the roots to stay high. If you water it down into the ground and let it soak in, then the roots are more likely to go down deeper and be safer when we have 6 weeks of dry weather like we have. Planting a perennial, to me, is a little more different because the way they're grown. Most trees and shrubs are grown in fields where they have the lines on them to water them. In a perennial situation, most of those are in groups and they're watered all the time, every day. Just keep them watered properly, and they have this very well-draining substance. It's not really soil, it's not really mulch, but it's a very close to being mulchy soil. That makes sense because it's very well draining. So it keeps those roots from getting wet and moist and getting a rot on them. You can see the plant in the middle. It's a beautiful plant. Pull that out of the pot and those roots are just gorgeous. It's perfect time to be transplanting it into the ground. But you can also see that the soil, instead of being more soil-like, is more mulch-like. And if you plant it just like it is, if you tease out those bottom roots a little bit, it's going to drain that water that you're watering very quickly. So you're going to have trouble keeping that watered until those other roots, the roots grow and grow out into the edges. So what I do is I get in there and I sort of shake out all of that mulch-looking soil and then replace it. When you're putting it in the hole, I build up the center of the hole just a little bit so that those roots hang down over it, and then backfill with the soil that had come out of the hole. It helps those roots get established much quicker, and when you're watering, the watering stays there. If on the left-hand side, you can see the top picture. That's a Coreopsis nana that I had planted in my pollinator areas. I planted about 9 of those. And I watered, and after about a week and a half, they were looking, you can see the top one is really looking pitiful. And I mean, I was watering like crazy, and I knew it wasn't overwatering because of the way I'd prepared the soil. So I decided I would pull up all of them, and when I did, you could tell that they were just not getting enough water. So I split them all in half, shook out all the compost or the mulch looking soil that was in there, and then replanted them. And after about a week, they were doing beautifully. So that's my take on perennials being planted. I think it's a little more of a help for them. And I just like the way that works for me for planting. So let's get into the meat of this, which are bulbs. And bulbs can be anything from pea size to almost basketball size, depending on the plant. Spring flowering bulbs are planted at this time, like Mark said. So this is a perfect time to be in the catalogs and finding wonderful things that you can plant and put in spaces where you need accents during the rest of the year. I did not know that Dutch iris was a bulb. I assumed that it was a rhizome, like the regular bearded iris. So I love learning all these things. So now I know that a Dutch iris is a bulb, and it's supposed to be planted at this time. They come in all different kinds of colors, and they're just so beautiful when they come up in the spring. The allium on the right is millennium. The bottom picture doesn't look like much, but that's the second bloom on those two millenniums. They're only about 6 blooms, and they were really pretty. But I was just tickled to get a second bloom out of them. Normally, they should look just like the top picture. That's a fun plant. And of course, the alliums come in all different sizes. They can be, these are only about 6 or 8 inches tall, but they can also be, some of the fancy ones are 2-3 feet tall. Here's one of the Iphion on the left is one of those bulbs that is the size of a pea. It's the tiniest little thing. I love this plant. I've had it in the ground for probably, this one's probably been in the ground for 12 or 13 years. It just is so beautiful. I just love it. The green strappy leaves that you see on the right come up in the wintertime. Early winter and through the winter, they're about 4 or 5 inches long, but they stay pretty much flat on the ground. They are just all tangled like that. I just think they're gorgeous. But then in the late winter, early spring, the flowers pop up, and they are just beautiful. They last a long time. Just those happy little faces. I have these on my walkway so I can see them when I'm going in and out of the house. Now you can see the center picture there had a lot. That was the 15 degrees we got last year. And so the leaves got a little bit toasted, but they've pretty much done everything they're going to do. They've fed the bulbs, and it'll be time for them to go away pretty soon anyway. They come in several different colors, but I prefer this gorgeous purple. It's just so beautiful with that yellow center. On the top is something I got from the Arboretum. And it's a reticulata that is also a bulb. Now, for some reason, I knew that they were bulbs, but this one is Painted Lady. I got a couple that really are beautiful from that sale they had. The first year I planted it, nothing came up. And so I thought it had gone the way of the compost pile. But the next year I had 2 come up. And they were these beautiful with all that design that you see on the leaves, just so pretty. And then last year I had 4 flowers. And this year you can see I have they're 2 larger bulbs up at the top here. Let's see, I do have a pointer up here. And then down here, you've got at least 3, maybe 4 more that will be coming up. And these last a long time. I was surprised at how long they will last. They started blooming. These 2 little guys started blooming the first part of September, and they're still going strong. The top 2 are finally starting to come out. So the lovely, lovely little plants, and the nice thing about these small bulbs is you can put them in small spaces. They can fill in little corners where you don't have anything. It's just bare ground, and you can get these to come up in the wintertime and in the spring where they can be just observed and enjoyed. You can smile every time you see them. Lycoris, I love a lycoris. They can be a little pricey, but I think they are totally worth the price. They're called surprise lilies. The other word for them is hurricane lily, since we have a hurricane coming up, maybe, hopefully not. Can use the rain, but don't want all that other stuff with it. On the left, you can see that beautiful bluebell. It's blooming on the one side on the bottom, and then on the far left, you can see there's another little spike coming up. Their leaves come up in the late or early spring and into the summer a little bit, and then they go away. They just disappear. And then out of nowhere, these spikes of the flowers just come up overnight. It's amazing to me because I go up and down my fence line almost every day. And one day I went up and I'm going, oh, it's blooming. And I'm just thrilled to pieces by how beautiful it is and what a joy it is to see that happy look to it. The center one is, you can see it's just all by itself, one spike. I planted that one last year. And so it's coming up, and then you can see how it looked right before it bloomed. I actually caught that one before it was blooming. The bottom center is the bluebell in bud. I mean, that's just an amazing color. On the right-hand side, those are planted right out in front of my house, in front of my front door. And I came out one day and I looked out and I said, oh my goodness, they're up, and they look just like that. And I had not seen them. Now, granted, 2 days before I'd gone into the house in the dark, but they were just there. And they have been there now. This is at least 2 weeks. They're still going strong. They'll probably be at least another week or two of that beautiful fiery red color. You can see this rhythm and blues has the little spidery look to it, and the petals are a little wavy, it's really fun. I think they're well worth it. That one, the rhythm and blues, I planted one bulb and it came up, and the next year I had one flower. Couple of years go by and I had 3, and this year it's the 4th year, and you can see I've got, I think it's 8 or 9 stems there this time. So they do multiply. They're well worth planting, just so beautiful. Now we have some other kinds. These are also can be a little expensive, but they're so beautiful. The leucochum, that's a taller plant, usually around 10, 12 inches tall, but it has those pretty white bells with the green dots on them. And you can see from the back of that picture that it is totally wintertime when these are coming up. They come in very early spring, sometimes as early as February, March, and they can be into April, but they're just so pretty. And again, they multiply, so that's great. In the center, you have the galanthus, which common name is snowdrops. And because they can bloom as early as late January and into February. They're not quite as tall as the colecochum. The cochum. Probably about 8 inches, maybe up to 10, but that pure white look. And some of them, if you can see, have little green spots on them. They also multiply, just absolutely beautiful. Down at the bottom, Mark mentioned these, the colcochicum. They call them autumn crocus. They're not really a crocus, of course, but they, again, have the leaves in the early summer that come up, and they're sort of a pretty leaf, actually, just really beautiful. And then they go away because it's been feeding the bulb all that time, and then they go away. And this time of year, up pop these beautiful little flowers. They're only about 3 or 4 inches tall, but they have been out for over 2 weeks now, and they'll be around for another couple of weeks as they continue to bloom. You can see there's one here that's going to open up. This one's just about faded, but you've got these 3 or 4 in the middle that are blooming. The one on the bottom, I showed that picture because the stem sort of looks like a mushroom to me. I was down there looking at it and I said, oh, that's very cool. So it's that real fat little stem. And I just thought that was lovely. Again, they can be a little expensive. These come in white, lavenders, little pinks, different, some of them are like doubles, just lots of different varieties, just beautiful. And they, again, this is something you can put in spaces where they can pop up and be beautiful and make you smile on a gray day and enjoy them in those small spots. Zophranthes. I love rain lilies. I think they're very underappreciated. They are always surprising you. You can water the Zophranthes all you want. They're not going to bloom. Mother Nature drops a little bit of rain on them, and a couple of days later, you have blooms all over the place. So it's really fun and lots of different colors. This one up on the top right is a yellow variety, and it's a small one. It's only about, that one's only about 3 or 4 inches tall, whereas the pink ones, the Robustus and the Rosa, they're 6, 8 inches tall. They come in the pure whites, pinks. They have some almost shocking pinks now. Lots of new varieties coming out in the Zophranthes. And again, these are ones that you can plant just about anywhere. They pop up. They look a little bit like grass, so you have to be careful. You need to mark them. You can see I have markers everywhere so that I don't accidentally pull them up thinking they're grass, or not myself, but occasionally when you have help, you know how help can be. So you have to mark them to make sure you know where they are, but they are just so lovely to come up and shine their faces up at you. And again, you can put them in small spots. Just put a few here, a few there. They will multiply very well. I had to move a clump this actually in the middle of the summer, and they moved beautifully. The two of the areas I moved them actually bloomed this last rain that we had, so I was thrilled that they had moved so well. But it's a nice bulb. It's just such a beautiful plant. Lilies are true bulbs. They are just gorgeous. They come in all different sizes and shapes and colors. You have your Oriental lilies, which have the smells. You have your Asiatic lilies that do not. I go for Oriental because I'm a fragrance person. This is the tiger lily up on the top left, and you can see there's a butterfly enjoying a lunch on that. The white ones, the tall, wonderful fragrance on the white. That white lily is probably 6 feet tall, so that's excellent for the back of the borders where it can be absolutely gorgeous over top of trees or shrubs and other perennials. The only trouble with lilies is, and I didn't know this until this past year, deer love them. So you have to be careful to maybe put them somewhere where they may not be able to get to them. I had my deer come around and snack on all of my shorter lilies. The only ones they didn't touch for some reason were my stargazer, the bottom right. And that's a very tall lily, about 4 feet, 5 feet tall. And all of my stargazers were left. The rest of them all had their tops taken out of them. So we'll see next year if the deer just don't like stargazer. But beautiful, and the fragrance and the colors that are out there for lilies. But this is the perfect time to be planting them. On the bottom left, I have oops, because this happens. And this was a very good nursery that I got these from. So things happen. They were labeled Lycoris. And when I started, they were just starting to come out of the pot. They were dormant and they were just starting to come out. And I thought, well, that's sort of an odd leaf for Lycoris. But I went with the label. So I put them in the ground, and as they grew, I said, no, that's not a Lycoris. I think that looks more like maybe a lily. And sure enough, it's beautiful lilies. So right now, I'm going to get 3 more Lycoris and plant them where I wanted them inside of where these plants are. I'm not going to get rid of them because they're beautiful. But so, you trust the labels as much as you can. This is a beautiful one, and you don't see it quite as much as I think you should. The oxblood lily, I'm not even going to say the scientific name, but it's also like the lycoris. It has its leaves come up in the early spring and summer, and then they go away. And again, almost magically overnight, up pops the flowers. And that's such a beautiful, intense red. And look at all the flowers on that. And those guys have only been in the ground. I think this is just its second year. So they have really been very happy. Just beautiful, just beautiful. I have it on the right-hand side because there are a couple of places where you read that if they're not at the right level of planting, that it will actually pull itself down into the ground where it wants to be. And when I had to move this a long time ago, you could see that I didn't know what was wrong with it. I thought something was wrong with it, but it actually was very, very high up in the soil. Actually, it was only about a half inch below the soil line. So it was trying to pull itself down to the 4 inches where it wants to be, which I just thought is so cool that a plant goes, I'm not happy here. I need to pull myself lower, and it figures out a way to do that. Oh, that was something I forgot to say. When you're planting bulbs, almost all bulbs are between 3 and 4 times their height. If they're an inch tall, then you'd plant it 3 inches or 4 inches deep. And most bulbs are pointy side up, and you can see where the roots are on them. And that goes, of course, to the bottom. But the oxblood lily is just, again, beautiful. It's just, and this one, this is from last year. This one bloomed for probably 3 weeks with all the different, you can see how many flowers were on it. Tulips, everybody loves tulips. I love tulips, but in this area, they are just not as long-lived as they should be. Their voles tend to like them very much, and for some reason, squirrels like to dig them up too. So if you're planting them, you need to plant them with either protection around them, a wire cage. They have those that you can buy, or a lot of the vole block or permatil you can plant in there and discourage that. But most of the time, they're not going to last much longer than 2 or 3 years because we're not really cold enough for the tulips. If you're wanting to try tulips, try some of the species tulips, which are not quite as showy, but are absolutely beautiful and tend to do a little bit better in our area. Daffodils, you can't go wrong with daffodils. If you can't find a daffodil that fits what you want, you can't be pleased, because they come in every size, from tiny little 3-4 inch tall to ones that can be 18 to 20 inches tall. You have the single stems like these on the bottom right. Those are single stems with the flowers. You have multi-stem or multi-flowers on a single stem. They grow through the leaves. You don't have to rake your leaves. They grow through ground cover without any trouble. So you can plant them all different kinds of places, and they come in every imaginable color. The only thing I've never seen in a daffodil is probably a really dark color. Most of the time they're fairly bright. Pure white, as you can see in that one. You have the solid yellows. The cups can be very different. Corollas, they can be very different with the outer petals and the cup here, different colors, different sizes. They bloom anywhere from and they label them that way. So you can go through the catalogs and you can look for early daffodils, mid-season daffodils, late season daffodils, and very late season. So you can cover at least 4 months, 5 months of the year with daffodils if you pick and choose properly. The little ones are great, again, to tuck in small spaces. I have the tete-a-tete along the walkway so that they come up while I'm coming in the house in the early spring. Sorry. Um, and then the larger ones can grow through your ground covers without any issues and be beautiful. And then as the leaves are going away, they sort of get hidden by that ground cover. With daffodils, as with anything like a bulb that needs to replenish its bulb after flowering or before flowering, you don't want to cut those leaves back. Don't braid them, don't turn them, gum band them or rubber band them so they're facing down. Let them turn yellow on their own. If you don't like that, make sure that you've got a perennial that's going to come up in front of it so that you hide those yellow leaves. They don't bother me. I just know that they're going to go away and they've gotten all their nutrition for next year, and I will be happy to see them when they come up the next year. But daffodils are just amazing. There are several catalogs out there. I get from several, but of course, during the last couple of years, it's been hard to find some of them. But this year I looked at the Brent and Becky's catalog, and they still had a lot of the beautiful ones still available. So that was nice. Crocus, again, they're like daffodils. If you can't find a crocus that meets your needs of the color or the time of year, you're not looking, because they are teeny tiny little ones. This is a one that a friend gave me, tiny little beautiful amber colored crocus that's only about 2 inches tall. And then you've got these guys that in the middle here that are probably about 4 inches. And there are some giant crocus that get to be about 6 inches. Some of them have very fine leaves like these on the bottom right. Others have a little bit more spiky on the top left. Colors, again, from pure white to lavender, purple, beautiful yellows, like the ones on the bottom left, that sort of amber color, which is, some of them have stripes. Just, there's so many different varieties. And again, you can tuck them in small spaces and enjoy them throughout the winter and the early spring. Tubers. I knew that cyclamen were tubers, and I have some cyclamen. I never took a picture of them. So here are some pictures of the types of cyclamens that you can have. They're great for shady locations. They need to be well drained. I usually plant mine with a little bit of the permatil and make sure they're pretty high up so they drain well. Love shade. Love to be in little nooks and crannies. The bottom left is the actual tuber. And I saw a picture one time, I think somebody at the Arboretum was talking about them, and the tuber was like a foot across, which I just think is amazing. So I'm hoping that someday I'll live long enough to see my little cyclamens with a foot wide tuber on them. But, and it sort of looks, I don't know, it looks sort of like Star Trek kind of thing. Anyway, I'm dating myself, right? Star Trek. But cyclamens are beautiful, and they come in the white, and you can see the ones up here have that little touch of a bright pink on them. They have that back facing petals that are just beautiful, just so pretty. And then the patterns on the leaves, they've done a lot of work with that, and you can find some that when they're not in flower are just beautiful ground covers with the different different shapes and spots and lines on the leaves. Just pretty things, just pretty and little, delicate, but really nice plants. Tuberous roots. I got to put those in because I have to talk about peonies. I love peonies. But I put in a little anemonella about 4 years ago, and it came up and it had a couple of little leaves, and then it went away. And then the next year it had some really pretty flowers. And this year it's a nice big clump. It's probably, I would say, a good 8 inches in diameter. And it had all these little flowers on them, and they bloomed and bloomed and bloomed just beautifully, early spring. And they bloomed for probably, I would say, at least 5 or 6 weeks. They had those little pink flowers in them. Delicate, love the shade. They were right beside my walk again, so you could see them and enjoy that pretty little pink flower looking at you. Peonies are something I absolutely love. Can't have enough peonies. They, excuse me, the herbaceous ones, the ones that die down, are beautiful. They do very well in this location if you, in our area, if you site them properly. They do not like our hot afternoon sun. It will make them all get shrivelly and brown and go back quicker than if they were in a little bit of shade in the late day. They also need to be planted a little bit higher than most of the time you read. The eyes or the crown of the plant should just be an inch maybe below the soil line so that they get as much cool weather as possible, because that cool sets the buds, the eyes for next year. They come in all different colors. They have the tree peonies, which are woody, and that's a beautiful plant. I have one just now starting to do well. I'll get some pictures of that this year, hopefully. But peonies are lovely. Just really, really, if it's not blooming well, look to make sure that it hasn't gotten covered up with too much mulch, or that it's being shaded out, too much shade, and it won't bloom quite as much. Rhizomes. Of course, the top left picture is an iris and a peony at the same time. Now, that peony is one that's in full sun. And about a month ago, it just had enough of that full sun, but it will come back. It's just not happy with the leaves. But iris are just beautiful. And again, there's just so many different colors and types of iris. You have your bearded and you have your not bearded, you have short and tall, you have I am not an iris aficionado, so I don't know all the technical terms, but I love them. And I have them. I have a lot in my fence line. I have the reblooming. The two on the right-hand side, this one and this one, are both reblooming iris. And it's lovely because both of these, this one was taken in October, and the one on the bottom right I think that was the middle of September last year. So you can see it's just beautiful. About middle of October, this yellow one still had blooms on it, but a couple of them had been zapped by a couple of our frosts. But look at how beautiful that iris is. And they can come in short versions, maybe not even a foot tall, to very tall, 3-foot tall ones, with all the different colors and shadings on their falls and the standards. Just absolutely lovely. I was fortunate enough to visit a couple in North Raleigh that this is their front yard on the right-hand side. And that's not the same picture taken twice. This is 3 different areas of their front yard. You can see from here that they have, there's peonies, there's an Amsonia, there, of course, the iris. If you look back here, you can see 2 Nephophias, the hot pokers back in there, and here is Baptisia right there. So just absolutely beautiful. And if you also look, which this is just so sad, every one of these has a label with the name of it, when it was hybridized, and what type of iris it is. Just so organized. It puts me to shame. But the iris are also very tough. They're great because if you've got locations that you're not doing very well, that some of the plants are struggling, iris are tough. This left hand is, first of all, that is one clump of iris that I planted about 4 years ago. This past year, I dug it up because I need to take some pictures for a talk. And you can see all of the rhizomes down here, all of these. And I separated them out. And out of that clump, I think I got, it was 14 separate plants. And you've got to have a fan and you've got to have roots with each part. So that in 4 years, it had just expanded that much. In that work that I did with this, I had all the trash and all the leaves and all that. And I am a messy person. I threw it off to the side of the parking area and just let it go. And about a month and a half later, I thought, well, I better clean that up. So I went to get it. And here is this little guy growing out of that trash on the cement pad in front of my house. So that lets you know that they are really tough little plants. I felt terrible. I took him and I planted him in my fence line immediately. So he did get put in the ground. So I'm pleased to say he's doing well. But I looked at that and it almost brought me to tears because I'm going, oh, I didn't know. When you're digging these up, if you see in this right here, you see all these little holes. I used to think that those were where insects had gotten into the tubers or to the rhizomes, but it actually is where the roots were coming out of the rhizome and they have died, so it leaves a hole in that. So it's not bugs, because I was thinking I had bugs in there, but that's just a natural way that it works. This is not something you can plant now, but I did not know that lotus and water lilies were rhizomes. And this is something you can put in your yard. You can have a nice little, one of those, like a whiskey barrel or a very large non-draining pot, and you can put water lilies and some of the smaller lotus in them. They're so beautiful, and it's just fun to see them with those big leaves. And just anyway, those are just cool plants. And I know you all being in the Arboretum, you would appreciate something that's just fun and different, but those you plant in the spring. And they do overwinter. These lotus have been in the ground 6 or 7 years, and my water lilies have been in my little pond for probably 10 years. Some of the perennials, we're done sort of with the bulbs, although you're never done with bulbs. There's so many things that you can plant. Just grab a catalog and make sure you've got lots of tea or water with you, because you'll be drooling over all the beautiful pictures that bulbs in the bulb catalogs. These are 2 perennials that I've been just tickled to pieces with this past couple of years. One of them is the Caryopteris, the blue butterflies. It is just gorgeous. It has been blooming all summer. I mean, you can plant it now. That's why I put it in here, because you can plant it now, and it will be ready for you for next year. And it's a tall plant. It's back here you can see these are the ones I planted originally. They're probably almost 3.5, 4 feet tall, especially because these are the flowers up on top of it. But it has sort of a cloud, a purple cloud look to it. But these are the flowers up close. They have these fun little hairs coming out of them, and then the lips down here, and you can see all the buds. And this was taken just a week ago. I took those pictures just a week ago, and it's been blooming all summer. Just a pollinator magnet, absolutely amazing. I had a monarch butterfly on a salvia violet riot, which is a shorter salvia, and he was having a snack there and enjoying himself, and I watched him for the longest time. And then he decided he wanted to go over to the blue butterflies, and as he went over to the blue butterflies, a hummingbird came out of nowhere and shushed him away. I mean, he didn't hurt him, but he flew right at him and made him move, and then the hummingbird started to partake of the blue butterflies bush. So, and then on the left-hand side is Caryopteris, the grand blue. This is a smaller bush. It's only about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall, very much more compact, but also a pollinator magnet. It has been blooming again almost all summer. These pictures were also taken just last week, and you can see down here on the left, full out flowers and flowers in real tight buds. So it's going to keep on blooming. Again, pollinators love it. All different kinds of pollinators, not just, your bees, but you have your little wasps, and you have your flies, and you have your little, who knows, whatever they are. I need Louise to tell me what all these creatures are, but just you can sit there for hours watching all your little pollinators enjoying Then the last thing, a couple of trees. You can't have too many osmanthus on the right-hand side. They're evergreen. They have wonderful fragrance. Love them. In the middle is black gum. That's a native. And this one is green gable. Just a beautiful shape, beautiful color, beautiful fall color. And on the left is a red bud. And again, you can't have too many red buds. And with the new developments on red buds, you can find different sizes, different colors, leaf colors, weeping forms, just beautiful. So here's the plant list. I forgot to say to get your phones ready, but Mark and Blake said they could send this out to the people that were on the list. If you want to take a picture with your phone, that is everything that I talked about today. And I'll let it sit there for a second, and then I'll move on to the next. And that's the last one. And I did forget one thing that's exceptionally important. And I might get my Master Gardener badge taken away if I don't say one of the very most important things you can do before you ever even start planting is do a soil test. And the soil test is free through the end of November. And then it's $4 a box until April the 1st, and then it's free again. You can get those at the farmers markets. You can get them at a lot of the good nurseries and garden centers. You can call the extension service. You can come by our office on Carrier Drive. We can get you that. It's very important to do that so you know where you're starting. Okay, I'm sorry I took so long. I get to talking. I love my plants.
You took exactly the right amount of time.
Oh, okay.
I would like to, anybody that has any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself now and ask them, or you can just type them in the chat and we can ask them to Cindy. If there are any questions, that is. Okay. Okay, that's good. Catherine's asking, do we need to chill tulip bulbs before planting them?
Originally, that's a great idea. You should get a better bloom from them, but obviously you can't do that every year. Well, you could if you dug them up every year, and you can buy them pre-chilled so that in areas like ours where we don't get quite enough cool for them, but that's just basically for the first year. So you can if you want, but it's not really necessary.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. Always do.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I missed it. If you went over it, I had to step away for a little bit for another meeting. But how do you deer? So deers, like when I've planted bulbs in the past, deer have just like dug up the bulbs even before they sprouted, or as soon as they sprout, especially for tulips, they eat them up. Did you go over that?
No, because deer are just deer. There's not really a whole lot you can do for them. Plant them behind other things they don't like. If you plant some of your bulbs behind salvias that they don't particularly care for, the smell of salvias. But when they're hungry, they're going to eat anything. They'll eat anything. Digging up, you can take care of that a little bit by putting a screen wire over it, like a chicken wire, and burying them below that. That way they can't dig into that wire, through the wire. Some tulips you can put in little baskets, but that only protects them from the voles. So unfortunately, like I did say that my lilies, which I didn't know were like daylilies and lilies, the deer's desserts, did eat all of my lilies except my stargazer lilies.
Okay. How about planting things like I love tulips, but I don't have any lilies, but if I plant lilies around the tulips, are they less likely to get to the tulips? Just eat the lilies and stop? Is it same season? I just have this issue with all.
The lilies are a little bit later than the tulips.
Okay.
But other than a fencing, and you'd have to make it so that it actually had a top to it also, so they couldn't reach over and snack on them. An 8-foot fence is just not practical in a garden. I mean, in a home garden, but a small fence with covering over it, the black plastic mesh might be able to keep them out, and you'd still be able to see them nicely.
Okay. And I was reading, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I was reading that if you sprinkle like chili pepper around it, that would keep them away. I don't want to hurt them. Is that something that you think would work?
Well, some of the deer away products that you find out there that keep away deer and rabbit, and they have some of that capsaicin in them. It's not going to hurt them, but you do have to apply it after every rain, and on heavy dew days, you're going to probably have to apply it again.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Susan's asking, do you recommend using Epsom salts around your plants?
I do not. I've done my soil test, and I've done what I need to do to make it a good location for what I'm planting. With some of the bulbs, I do put a little bit of bulb food when they first come up. Some of my older bulbs, I do that just because they've been there for so long. And that's something else I forgot to say. If your daffodils or your crocus are not blooming as well as they should be, they may be too crowded. So you'll need to pull them up and separate them out, give them away, put them in new locations, and then replant them. So that sometimes is a problem if your daffodils are not blooming as well as you think they should. But I don't put anything other than occasionally on, like I said, the old patches of bulbs. I don't put anything around them.
Okay. And that looks like that's all the questions from everybody. Oh, well, hold on. Here's Marilyn. Can you recommend spring blooming bulbs that don't need full sun?
Your crocus, your daffodils, they don't need full sun. The colocochums don't need full sun. Your snowdrops, I think, will take a good bit of shade. Most of the time when you're talking about these early spring blooming, you can plant them even in very heavy shade if it's deciduous shade. If it's pine shade, that's not going to work. But when the leaves come off the trees in the fall, and the flowers come, the leaves of the daffodils or the crocus come up, they're able to get that sun and build back their bulb while the leaves are not on the tree. Then when the plants are beginning to die back and the leaves are starting to turn yellow, that's when the leaves are coming out on the trees and you don't need the sun anyway. So a lot of bulbs, if you have that deciduous shade, can do very well in a good bit of shade. But daffodils do very well, crocus. The cyclamen, that's a great one for shade. I'm trying to think of some other ones. I know there are plenty of them.
Patricia's asking, what about bearded irises that have been planted a while but aren't blooming? What should I do?
That would be what I showed on that one picture where you have to dig them up and separate them out. Take the rhizome that has leaves on it, has a fan on it, and take off anything that doesn't have roots or a fan, and it's not going to grow. It will never grow another plant unless it has an eye on it or a roots. So then you dig that whole clump up and divide them up, and then replant a couple in that location. And then again, with the extras, you can give them away, which is wonderful, or plant them somewhere new. But that's usually the problem. The other issue could be they're too deep. If they're several inches deep or been covered up by some wash or maybe way too much mulch, they could be too deep and not able to set their blooms. So check first of all to make sure they're not too deep. And then if you have a large clump of them, it's probably time to dig them up. It's not hard. They're very high up in the ground, so it's easy to pull them out and separate them.
Okay. Well, I think that for real is all the questions this time. So I would like to thank you, Cindy, for giving us this wonderful presentation. I sure learned a lot, and I hope everybody in the audience learned a lot as well. Our next Extension Master Gardener lecture will be the 24th of October. We're going to have Leah Dale here doing a talk entitled A Woodland Walk, What You May Find If You Look. So that's October the 24th. So please join us for that. And thanks again for everybody who joined us for this talk today. And we'll see you later. Take care.
Thank you.